And I came out of the trailer early one morning, and there was that solid guy with those tattoos leaning on a shovel. And I'm going to pull this up right here. Here's where he was leaning on this shovel. And I didn't know if he could speak English. I had no clue whatsoever. And I walked over to him and I said, I introduced myself. I said, "Do you speak English?" And he said, "Yeah, what about it?" And I said, "You know, Raymond," I said, "I was going to talk to you when I was here before." "Yeah, so?" He was really sarcastic. And I said, "The Lord wants me to talk to you." And that caught his attention. I said, "You got a few minutes to sit down?" And he said, "Yeah, I got a few minutes. I'll sit down with you." And so I'm going to pull out one more picture here I want to share with you. So we sat down, and I started telling Raymond about Jesus. And Raymond sat and listened for a long time. And my brother, he snuck over and snapped these pictures. I didn't even know he was there. And I was just telling him what God had did in my life and in my walk with my testimony. I was just sharing that with him. And Raymond bowed his head and asked Jesus Christ in his life. And he just started to cry. And he said, "No, you don't understand." He said, "You don't understand, Steve." He said, "I was up in Pelican Island Prison in California." And he said, and I believe it was back in '84 or so, but he said, we had an uprising there, and I was pretty much ahead of the Spanish gang in that prison. We stabbed 84 black guys or more that day and almost burned the prison to the ground. He said, "I was bad. I was so bad." He says, "I've killed people when I was a gang in LA. And he said, they finally took me to the border, the U.S. did, and threw him out and said, "Don't you ever come back." And he said, I lived underneath people's porches where they had opened up trap doors and pour their urine. And he says, and I ate out of trash cans. And he said, God brought me here today. And he was crying. And he says, I can't tell my dad. I can't tell my dad. And I said, tell him what, Raymond? He says, my dad was a pastor. He was a pastor. And he'd say, Raymond, you're going to go to hell if you don't stop your ways. And he said, I'd reach in my pocket and I'd pull out a crack pipe. And he'd say, I'm not even going to repeat what he told me. But it was not very, very kind. It was of Satan. He'd smoke that pipe right in front of his dad. He said, I don't need your God, Dad. He just bellered. He said, now I want to tell my dad I accepted Jesus Christ and he's dead. He passed away. He said, I won't be able to tell him. I said, he knows. You'll tell him someday, Raymond. You're a child of God's now. Something that tells me he knows. But you'll be able to be with your dad for eternity. That's coming.